You helmed the agency after the global financial crisis. There were a lot of raised eyebrows after word of this trade came out. What is your read on what's happening here, and maybe take us behind the scenes of what the CFTC might be doing as it looks into this?
One, the only way that the American public can have confidence in markets is they think that insiders can't get ahead of them with material information. I mean, that's just not fair, right? But two, the only way we can have confidence in our government is that we don't think that somebody in government or their friends or family are trading ahead of us, right? So those two things are really important. And we knew that 16 years ago. After the financial crisis, we were putting reforms in place, and I was honored to head this thing called the CFTC. And we were going to Congress, and I have to tell you a little story about Eddie Murphy.
Okay, the comedian?
The comedian, yes.
An actor?
An actor. And he had done this movie, Trading Places.
This is a legendary movie in my household. I never understood the end of it until like a year ago, but yes, this is an amazing movie.
And it's an amazing movie where Eddie Murphy is trading these things called futures. It's a contract where it's
the frozen concentrated orange juice.
There you go. There you go. But do you remember, Christina, what he was trading it on? He was trading it on a report from the Department of Agriculture about the orange crop.
He basically had inside information.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I get to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I asked the staff, I said, well, that's illegal, right? And they go, well, boss, no. There was a lot of mumble. And wonderful people. So we went to Congress in the midst of all that, and we said, we've got to get something. And I used to say it was the Eddie Murphy provision.
Okay.
It's got to be illegal. Yeah. Well, guess what? We were successful. Al Franken, who was in that movie and was a senator, had a great yucks on a couch in his office. But here's where it is today. It is illegal for a government actor, somebody who works in the government, to pass on information to somebody and to have that person knowingly or with reckless disregard of the knowledge trade on that information. Also, it's illegal for that government actor to do it.
Yeah.
So it's both the government actor or somebody passing on.
But how do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's illegal.
Yeah.
But how do you prosecute it? Because it can't be easy, because it's not like these trades all have the person's name on them. They go through intermediaries, they go through trading desks. Talk to us about how the investigation works. You have to figure out who did it, when they did it, what information they have, and if it was public information or not.
It's hard. It's hard. And I was honored to run federal law enforcement agencies twice. One in the commodity space, one in the security space. And so the staff is doing this, not the political appointees, but the staff is doing it with a lot of technology, now using artificial intelligence as well, tracking and looking for patterns, just like you do at Bloomberg, looking for patterns. Is there a spike in trading for 3 minutes before something happens? Like we saw late in March, I think it was March 23rd, like you've all reported we saw again on April 7th, like various members of the House and Senate on both sides of the aisle have written, Senator Warren, but others also, Senator Whitehouse and others have written. And so I would think, yes, the government's going to investigate these things. But to your point, Christina, it's hard because it's about pattern recognition and then getting behind that and saying, well, who actually traded? Yeah. And even if you identified, David, I'm not saying you did this, but if David, somebody in your production booth, your control room, in the 1 second delay that we have here, traded on whatever information, even in that 1 second, they might be trading on material non-public information. I'm not saying they are.
No, of course not.
Right.
We'll follow up after.
If they don't show up for their shift, we'll know something's happened. But so far, our team is all still here. So
Right. But then what happens if all those government actors show up for their shifts? And they're in a situation room, or maybe they're handling President Trump's tweet.
Yeah.
Or they call it X now.
Right.
It's same.
Yeah.
Or Truth Social.
Yes.
Right? So that's important. Look, I think also Congress is looking at whether to ban certain contracts, prediction markets. Think about it.
Well, let me use that as a segue. We had Alyssa Slotkin on the show talking about a ban that she's suggesting be put in place for government officials. They shouldn't be able to make bets.
Congressional staffers. Yeah.
And in that interview, it was kind of clear that there was some ambiguity surrounding who's regulating these spaces. So as we talk about prediction markets, and you on a recent podcast episode point out people have been betting on things for centuries. Talking about betting on the Pope, who's not going to be back in 15th century, whatever. Is it well regulated? When we look at Kalshi, which is domiciled here in the United States, Polymarkets is not. It's overseas and subject to less regulation. Is there an adequate regulatory apparatus surrounding all of this right now?
I think that collectively people probably agree no.
No.
Right now, no. One, you're right. Humans have been betting on things since antiquity. But how it's regulated, and at least on sports betting, we've done that at the state level.
Yeah.
And I worked on that reform back in 2010. Mm-hmm. I don't remember a single member of Congress, a single senator or House member saying, oh, we're going to give you your little agency, Gensler. We're going to give you authority to regulate all this gaming.
And this also isn't a really pro-regulatory environment right now. That's just not where the winds of federal government seem to be.
No, but I can tell you this. The majority leader at the time, Senator Harry Reid, would have never voted for something to basically preempt Nevada gaming.
The gentleman from Nevada, that's right.
No,
yeah.
it's rather absurd to think that's what Congress meant to do. Now, the courts, that will play out. That's about sports betting. Mm-hmm. But now you have these geopolitical events. And we did work with Congress at the time to have a prohibition put in place on any contracts on assassination, war, terrorism, gaming, and otherwise unlawful acts. And that was something that they gave to the CFTC that we could prohibit. I thought we voted on that. I remember voting on that. There was a rule, 40.11, I think. Uh-huh. And so I thought we voted on that. It was
settled.
Well, sometimes in life, things that you think are settled aren't settled.
Spoken as a true lawyer here.
No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a markets guy.
That's very true. That's true.
But I would say this. I think the prediction markets, some things we might just say as a society we're going to ban. And
yes.
you talked about the Pope in 1591. Gregory XIV said no betting on papal conclaves.
Some things are off the table.
That's just off the table. But guess what? In that reform effort in 2010, Congress said we can't bet on movie. That's right, on box office receipts. Howard Lutnick was running Cantor Fitzgerald at the time. He's now the Secretary of Commerce. Yes. He came into us and said, we want to start a contract on movie futures. What do you think, CFTC? And we looked at it, and we voted. It was a split vote, 3-2. We lost one Republican, one Democrat, actually. But we voted, and we said, there's an economic purpose here. You're hedging some risk. The movie industry, Hollywood, reacted negatively. And they had a vehicle, this reform thing going through. Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont took that side, got an amendment in. That is illegal. You cannot bet on movie futures in this country, nor can you bet on onions. And that was Gerald Ford in the 1950s.
Okay, so we can't bet on movie futures or onions.
A great lesson in lobbying.
But we can,
in Washington,
100%. I covered DC for 17 years. But you can now bet on going to war. You can bet on all these real huge outcomes.
But not on assassination, war, or terrorism. I thought I voted on that 16 years ago.
But I mean, talk to us about the larger picture of this, because we're in an era of so much data and commoditization, and refining everything down to the numbers. I do worry, and I'm not a very touchy-feely person, but I do worry about what it does to us when you are marketizing things like acts of war and people dying in conflicts and these huge geopolitical events.
Which could have economic consequences, I should add.
Of course.
Absolutely. And there's day trading, and people who watch this show know that people can trade on options that are expiring the same day.
Yeah.
And we try to allow the retail public and the big institutions to trade and meet in those markets, or even to buy and sell and speculate on the price of oil, if it's well regulated and we guard against insider trading and the like. But then there's some things that you would say, really, do they have economic consequences? Mm-hmm. Do we want to have that? Now, why we banned onions in the 1950s and why we banned movie futures in the 2010. But assassination, war, terrorism, death contracts.
Yeah.
Like even in 18th century England, and this was a real problem at Lloyd's of London, which was at a coffee shop. King George II in the 1740s had to deal with his noble lords say, hey, we're losing too many times to the pirates. Can we ban betting on ships going down? They use different words.
Yes.
Admiralty insurance, you have to have an insurable interest in the ship. So maybe you have to have an insurable interest to have terrorism insurance.
We have about a minute left here. Where do you see this? How do you see this developing here over the next year? Groundswell of public interest and leads to what?
It's a challenge. I think that this administration will try to do their best to push out insider trading, and that's because they have an interest in promoting this. Two, the courts will play out. I don't think it was Congress's intent to preempt state gaming laws, but this administration wants to take that on and have a little agency of 500 people be a national gaming regulator.
Yeah.
I think I don't.
You don't
and
see
then
the
I
evolution.
think Congress. I hope Congress takes up some prohibitions on certain, like death and assassination contracts.
All right. On that cheerful note, we're going to have to leave it there.